Hello everyone, this is Sayyada Habiba Begum. Today in this PPT, I am going to explain about the chapter 2 of enterprise systems, that is process identification. In this PPT, I am going to deal with the introduction of process identification, the context of process identification in which we can see balance scorecard, and then we'll move forward with process architecture, and the last thing we'll deal is the process selection. Thing we are going to deal is about process identification. So the process identification is a set of activities aiming to systematically define the set of business processes of a company and establish clear criteria for prioritizing them. The output of process identification is a process architecture which represents the business processes and their interrelationships. A process architecture serves as a framework for defining the priorities and the scope of process modeling and redesign projects. A process is simply a series of steps performed in order to accomplish the outcome. An organization may have hundreds of processes or only a few. A processes can be either express or implicit, either they can be simple or complex. Regardless of such variables, organizations gain numerous benefits from identifying and improvising their processes. Here you can see the importance of process identification, where you can see a number of categories which will have effect on process identification. So the first thing is visualization. So identifying processes allows an organization to begin visualizing the range of activities from beginning to end, helping employees discern what steps are necessary and who needs what along the way. Next is to set the benchmark. So until a process is identified and documented, the team has no clear basis for determining whether they are meeting requirements or not. And then they can have a stability if they have an process identification, as once they can have identifying their processes, they can begin stabilizing the steps, bringing greater regularity and uniformity in the functions. And it also affects the scalability. As you articulate your processes, you describe inputs and outputs. By identifying inputs, you understand what is needed to scale a process upward or downward in response to changes in demand. The next thing is having a simplicity in execution and recall. Identifying and beginning to document your processes allows employees to more easily recall the steps required, making processes simpler to execute. And the last thing we can have is the basis for improvement. Identifying and stabilizing the processes creates a baseline for modification and improvement. When a process is ad hoc, it is much harder to determine whether bottlenecks arise and how modification in method could increase effectiveness. Once a process is identified and stabilized, however, your team can begin to improve and experiment with an eye towards best practices. Here you can see the balanced scorecard, which have four different criterias, that is financial integrity, customer integrity, internal integrity, and the education and growth. The financial integrity will have goals like return on investment, cash flow, and financial results, which where the financial integrity is totally dependent upon the customer integrity, where the customer integrity will have goals like customer satisfaction rate, customers retention, and providing the proper delivery and quality product performances to the customers for maintaining a good relationship with them. And the customers relation will automatically be dependent upon the internal process of organization, where the activities per function we perform in organization, the processes alignment and the automation we use in the organization will affect the internal processes. and later we can have the education and growth, which will affect the job satisfaction of the employees and the employee turnover and the specialist knowledge and skills, then having a training opportunities for the employees if needed. Next thing is process architecture. The aim of process architecture is to provide a representation of processes that exist in the organization. The definition of process architecture has two-phase complexity. In order to approach this complexity in a systematic way, first we differentiate categories of processes, then second we describe different relationship between the processes that are important for the process architecture, then third we present a method for defining the process landscape as a top level representation of the process architecture. The first step in process architecture is process categories, where you can see the three different categories. The first is the core processes that covers the essential value creation of a company, that is the production of goods and services for which customer pays. These includes design and develop, manufacturing, marketing and sales, delivering, after sales and direct procurement, that is from procuring materials to the managing of customer service. The second stage is the support processes, which enables the execution of these core processes. These includes the managing the personnel and managing the information in the organization, and then managing the assets and the financial management of the company. The third is about the management processes, which provides direction, rules and regulations through which the management will define vision and will develop the strategy, and after developing a strategy they will be implementing the strategy, and lastly they will manage the risk in the organization. For a process architecture, we can distinguish three types of relationship between processes. They like sequence, decomposition, and specialization. The first relationship is sequence. This relationship describes that there is a logical sequence between the two processes. Sequence is also referred to as an horizontal relationship. For instance, processes can be in a customer-producer relationship. This means that one process provides an output that the other process takes as an input. Also in the example, it shows that the core processes are in a sequential relationship from procuring materials to produce products, market products, deliver products, and eventually manage customer service. The object that is passed between the sequential processes categorizes this relationship. The second is the decomposition. This relationship describes that there is a decomposition in which one specific process is described in more detail in one or more sub-processes. Decomposition is also referred to as an vertical relationship. For instance, the produced products process can be described in more detail, including different activities that have to be executed to bring it to the successful completion. And the third relationship is specialization. This relationship describes that there exist several variants of a generic process. For instance, there might be a generic process for handling job application in a multinational company. Since there are different legal constraints on this process in different countries, there will be, for example, one variant of this process from Austria and one for Germany. Variants are not only defined for different legal contexts but also for different categories of the products or services and for different types of customers or suppliers. The model of the process architecture that covers the processes on level 1 is known as the process landscape model. It shows the core processes on a very abstract level. Each of the elements of the process landscape model points to one or more detailed business processes on level 2. The definition of process landscape model is the most important challenge for the definition of the process architecture. The process architecture on level 1 has to be understandable by all major stakeholders in the first place. As a rule of thumb, it should be compact, showing no more than 20 business processes of an organization. Further, it has to be sufficiently complete such that all employees of the organization can relate their daily work to it and accept it as a consensual description of the company. Therefore, it is important to define the process architecture in a systematic way with a specific focus on the derivation of the process landscape model. In the picture shows the example of process map of Vienna's public transport operator. We can see that the categories of core processes, support processes, and the management processes were used. It is interesting to note that the core processes are subdivided into different end-to-end processes: manage customer relationships, operate vehicles, transport customer, and provide infrastructure. Visually, these are shown in the process groups. Organizations often have more than one-to-one process such that different sequences are shown in the process landscape categories of core processes. In the same way, the different processes in the management and the support processes can be seen, where the management processes involves manage enterprise, communicating in and out, and the managed processes, quality management, risk management, and making innovations as in the based on the time. And the support processes will focus on managing the different things in an organization, like personnel, financials, information, materials, and the distributions, and providing winter services as well. Here you can see the example of SAP's process architecture. SAP is one of the largest software vendors worldwide. Its ambition is to help its customers to streamline their processes such that they are able to predict customer trends based on live data. SAP also has an internal unit that is responsible for business process management, organizing the processes in which more than 87,000 employees of SAP work. In the figure, it shows the model of level 1 of SAP's process architecture. It distinguishes 10 major processes, 2 in the category management processes, 3 in the core processes, and the 5 in support processes. And the next thing in the process identification is the process selection. The aim of process selection is to define criteria for assessing the performance of identified business process. This task builds on observation that business process differs in terms of their importance and maturity. In order to define a solid base selection, process performance measures should be considered in combination with general criteria. The advantage of process performance measures is that they can be used to plot the set of processes as a process portfolio. The first thing in the process selection is the selection criteria. As the name suggests, selection criteria are a set of requirements by which a prospective employer gauges the suitability for a role. An ideal candidate is one who meets all the requirements. If you do not meet all the requirements, more often than not, you will not get an interview, regardless of your qualifications. Selection criteria are serious enough that if no applicants meet them, an employer will re-advertise a role. As you can see in the picture, different selection criteria will have a different proportions towards it, and it will be calculating the requirement on the basis of the prospective employer, and it will have a suitability of both of them. The second thing in the process selection is the process performance measures, where the process performance measures aims at checking the achievement of strategic and operational goals and supporting decision making for the continuous optimization of business processes. It involves the definition, gathering, visualization and analysis of a set of indicators that evaluate performance relevant data of one or several business processes. These indicators, usually known as an process performance indicators, are quantifiable metrics that allow an evaluation of the efficiency and effectiveness of business processes and can be measured directly by data generated within the process flow. The final step in the process selection is the process portfolio. And the process portfolio management has like a very important role in success of business process management for a number of reasons. It provides an approach or mindset that is essential in directing limited resources in terms of funds, peoples, etc. into the processes with the highest demand for an increased process orientation. In the true sense of a balanced portfolio, process portfolio management can be used to diversify the business process management governance activities, leading to parallel projects in the different stages of the business processes life cycle. In summary, process portfolio management marks the difference between the isolated and uncoordinated improvement and the management of single process and the holistic process-based management of an organization. Thank you.